So I'm just going to move on. We're going to get into talking about diet and nutrition with Erin. This is a really hard topic because I know everybody's been told not to eat tomatoes or not to eat carbs or anything. So hopefully you can get some benefits from listening to Erin. So Erin is, she recently graduated from Deakin University in Melbourne, where she received her bachelor's degree in food and nutrition with a major in health promotion and a master's in dietetics. Wow. Erin now works as a new graduate clinical dietitian at the Peter MacCallum Cancer Centre within the haematology, breast, sarcoma, tumour streams, and aims to assist patients in maintaining a great quality of life throughout their treatment with the use of nutrition. So thank you for joining us today, Erin. I hope that you can get through some of these questions that the patients are always told by family and friends and loved ones, and everybody is really just trying to offer all the best advice, but I hope that you can shoot them down the right path to them. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks so much for having me. And I just want to say a big hello to everyone that's listening in today as well. Really appreciate your time coming along today. Bit of a hard act following up with Jake there. He's a colleague of mine and is just such a fantastic person to work with. So very nice to see him having a chat as well. So I'm just going to share my screen and look, we're going to talk about a few things today, and I'm sure you'll have some questions along the way. So please do hold on to your questions if you've got them, and you can just shoot them through at any time if you need to. But we do have some time for questions as well along the way. So like I said, my name's Erin, and Lisa gave me a very nice introduction, so thank you. So I'm a clinical oncology dietitian here at Peter Mac. And I'm working specifically in the haematology, sarcoma and breast tumour streams at the moment. I've learned a lot about, this specific area recently. So I'm very much looking forward to being able to chat to you guys about it today. And it's also turned out to be Dietitians Day today as well. So it's very nice to be able to give a little bit of a nod to my own profession today in such a great way. So further ado, today we're going to be talking about, what it means to be eating well when you have cancer and when you're going through your cancer treatments. It's going to be very different for everybody. And so one thing that I do want you to keep in the back of your mind is that everybody responds differently. Everybody's bodies are different. And so what might work for your neighbour may not necessarily work for you as well. Practical tips for managing some common side effects, whether you're going through chemotherapy, immunotherapy, radiation, surgery, whatever it might be, what it will look like eating well after cancer, when you've been given that big old tick of remission or you've finished your treatments and, you're wanting to kind of get back into that rhythm and routine that you had before your diagnosis. Myth busting. I know that that's a huge area when it comes to dietetics and to nutrition specifically related to cancer. That's not just specific to cancer. It's all around the world. I'm sure you've all seen, different diets, and one week coffee's bad, the next week coffee's good, and, all the other kind of things that go with that. Where and how to find trusted information, who to trust when it comes to, talking about your cancer treatment and how to manage everything. And there's just some useful resources at the end as well. So jumping into the first bit, eating well during cancer treatment and what is that going to look like for me? So as I mentioned before, it's crucial that you take nod to the fact that it is going to be very independent and it is very different for every single person. That starts as a baseline before you even jump into your treatment. It depends on your genetics, it depends on your lifestyle, it depends on your stress levels, what you're used to with your family, your education levels, and all of those other things as well. So then when we start to talk about, diagnosis and what your treatment is, if it's an intense treatment, a moderate treatment, that's all going to be playing effect into it as well. So different treatments are going to have different side effects. You know, if you're dealing with chemotherapy, you might be finding that you're really nauseous, you might be vomiting, or, you know, you might have some really rampant bowels that, you know, usually aren't pleasant for yourself or the people that you're living with. You might be experiencing a lot of fatigue, especially if you're getting radiation. And so, again, just touching on that, it is really important that, you know, we take this very, I guess, independently, and we treat it, you know, with your symptoms and side effects, not very much like a blanket kind of effect. The main aim for this when you're going through treatment, I guess, you know, with your dietitians and your allied health assistants that, you know, you engage with along the way, the main aim is to maintain your weight. We don't want you losing weight. We want you to, you know, keep your muscles nice and strong, keep your weight nice and stable. Because when you are able to do that, it means that you're able to tolerate your treatment a bit better. You're able to protect your immune function. You're able to prevent onset of infections, or if you do have an infection, you can recover from it quicker. You're going to be able to keep up with your day-to-day activities and, you know, spend time with your family and your friends and do all those kind of normal day things that you do every other day. And it does often mean that, you know, you've got a quicker recovery from all of these things as well. So what does it look like when we're talking about weight maintenance, and how can we actually do that? So high protein, high energy diet is really typically something that we encourage. It's, you know, high in protein, and that means meat, chicken, fish, eggs, dairy products. You know, if you're a vegetarian, you'll be having things like tofu, nuts and seeds. And we want to include these types of foods, as protein is considered the building blocks of our body. So it helps to support our muscles to stay nice and strong. It's supporting our immune function so that we're able to tolerate our treatment. And what can happen is that, you know, when you have been diagnosed with cancer and when you are going through these treatments, your energy and protein requirements are going to go through the roof. You know, your body's got to metabolize the medication that you're getting. You've got to be able to jump back and recover from a surgery. And, you know, keeping in mind, typically speaking, you know, cancer is a metabolically active disease. So it is going to be trying to use up as many stores as it can to try and support its growth. And when we're trying to metabolize all of the medication and the chemotherapy as well, it's really important that we give our bodies enough nutrition so that we don't have to break into our muscles and lose a bit of weight. A lot of the time, you know, you're going to be losing your appetite when you're going through treatment. Unfortunately, it is a very common side effect. And so some things that you can do is having small, frequent meals rather than your typical, you know, breakfast, lunch and dinner. You can have maybe a smaller breakfast, morning tea, lunch, afternoon tea and a bit of dinner. And doing this means that, you know, when you're thinking about sitting down and eating a meal, it's less of a burden. And I guess much when you think about like a to-do list, if you're able to have something that's quite achievable and you can tick that off the list, the feeling of success and achievement that you will get from that is going to be far better than having a to-do list that is just so long that you just can't tick anything off. And you know, you start to kind of get a bit hard on yourself and feel like you're not achieving much. So having small, frequent meals is not only going to maintain your motivation to eat and reduce the burden of eating when you're not hungry, it's also going to, you know, continue to encourage you and make sure that you're not losing weight as well. Eating by the clock is a really handy tip and trick. I often tell patients to, you know, everyone's got a smartphone on them every day. So, you know, set an alarm on the hour every hour or every 2 hours, whatever it might be that works for you. And that's just a little reminder to just go have a few bites to eat, have a few spoonfuls of yogurt, have a handful of nuts and seeds. That's always going to be better than not eating anything at all. So in the instances where you're not able to kind of get through those bigger portions, making sure that you've got as much nutrition as you can in those little amounts is going to make sure that you're getting more bang for your buck, basically. So if we're thinking about having oats for breakfast, for example, or scrambled eggs, we'll go with scrambled eggs, you can have your 1 to 2 eggs and scramble it all up. That's a fantastic baseline. And rather than having 4 eggs in a portion, have your 1 to 2 eggs that you can manage, add in a bit of cream, add in a bit of oil, add in a bit of butter, and already you've really enhanced the amount of calories that's going to be in there. And you've also added in some extra protein too. In those instances when you're really struggling with solid foods in total, going for something like a nourishing drink is going to be a really good, helpful idea. And so that can look like a lot of different things. That can just, start from like a plain glass of milk, could be a glass of orange juice. But on the other scale, if you're really struggling, you can definitely go for some supplement drinks like Sustagen, or there might be some other ones that, the healthcare professionals that you're working with can put you in their direction. Then we've got nausea, which, can be a really nasty side effect to have. It may not be that you experience it, and in that case, that's great. But unfortunately, again, a lot of patients do experience this. So the first and foremost thing would be to make sure that you're really, communicating with your treating team, keeping everything transparent and telling your treating team what you are experiencing, including if you're feeling nauseous. There might be some medications that we can take to assist that. And if you are taking those medications, take them half an hour to an hour before your meal so that it can really jump into effect and stop you from feeling sick, and can actually enhance you to have your appetite back, even if it is just in a short period of time, so that you can get some food in to really support yourself. Try not to skip meals if you can. Sometimes, if you don't have anything in your tummy or first thing in the morning, sometimes you will feel a bit sick. Bit of a hunger pang can kind of kick in as well. And we don't want that, because if you've got, nauseousness from your chemotherapy or your other treatment, and then you've also got nothing in your tummy, you're going to get a double bang there, and it's going to be really unpleasant for you. So trying to kind of keep something in your tummy at all times will be great. Even if it is, again, just a spoonful of yogurt, or maybe a little bit of lemonade if you can tolerate it, a bite of cheese, just something is going to be better than nothing. Choose dry and salty foods. They tend to be really easily tolerated. So, potato chips, or, some like Jats biscuits or something like that, or going for some colder, bland type foods like a plain sandwich. Sometimes the smell of foods can really enhance that feeling of nauseousness, which we don't want. Brushing your teeth and using your mouthwash regularly. So this might seem like a pretty straightforward one, and typically people are brushing their teeth 1 to 2 times a day. But sometimes what can happen, especially if you're having an empty tummy, is that you can get a bit of a bad breath and a bad taste in your mouth, and this can also come from your treatment as well. So making sure that you've got your regular hygiene going there as well can really help to keep your mouth feeling fresh. Ginger lollies, dry ginger ale, flat lemonade, peppermint tea. These might not work for everybody, but there has been some evidence to suggest that they do work. It's only ever worth trying, especially if you're trying to kind of hold off from having some medication to help you. Bowel problems. And again, not everybody would experience this, but some people really do. And there's a whole range of reasons why we might experience bowel problems. And, that can range from your treatment as a direct result, so chemotherapy or radiation, especially if it's in the bowel region. If you're having a surgery for whatever reason, antibiotics, pain medication can upset your bowels as well, if you've got any infections, and stress. Stress is a really huge factor when it comes to having some bowel problems. There's a gut brain axis there, and all it can take is one or two thoughts that can instigate some emotions, and instantly that's just going to get your bowels running as well. So as always, talk to your doctor. It's really important that you are really transparent with your team when it comes to your side effects from treatment or anything else that you're experiencing. In terms of diarrhea, and typically this one tends to be more common when you do have infections, or if you're having immunotherapy, this can be one that pops up quite a bit. I guess the biggest concern when it comes to diarrhea is the loss of fluid that you're getting. You might be going to the bathroom 10 times a day, and in that instance you're not really absorbing much nutrition from your gut at all. So making sure that you're drinking enough water, more than you typically would be otherwise, is really important. Again, having small frequent meals so that we're not putting too much pressure on our bowels to kind of process and digest everything as well. We want to eat foods that are high in soluble fiber, and what soluble fiber does is it is, I guess, a dissolvable fiber. It binds to the water and it turns into a bit of a gel, and that can assist with bowel movements and to protect the lining of the gut as well. So soluble fiber are things like oats, white rice, pasta, white bread. Those things can be quite helpful. And limit aggravators of the bowel, so alcohol, caffeine, if there's any particular intolerance that you might have to food or anything like that, avoid it if you know that your adverse reaction is going to be diarrhea. And constipation, in this, again, it's really important that you have enough fluid to help keep your bowels moving. Quite often pain medication can be a huge cause of constipation, and you tend to either be on one end of the scale or the other. It's not super common that you have an experience of the both. Definitely make sure you're drinking enough water, because you want your bowel to be having enough water in there to flush everything out. And eat foods that are high in total fiber. So you do have your soluble fiber, which we've mentioned before in the diarrhea, but we've also got your insoluble fiber, and that's a fiber that doesn't get broken down and it adds bulk to the feces. So that's things like your fruits and veggies, kiwi fruit, pears, nuts and seeds, grains. They're going to be really helpful. And sometimes a little bit of movement as well can be really handy. Doesn't have to be much. It can just be walking from one end of the house to the other, and just, maybe even stretching a little bit. That can be really helpful in stimulating the bowels as well. Taste changes. So this is a very, very common side effect. And again, it's going to look different for everybody. Sometimes, quite often I've heard patients say, oh, everything just tastes like cardboard, or things taste like metal. Things are either really salty, or they're really sour, or they're too sweet. It's not always that those main food group tastes like salty and sweet are going to be enhanced. It's more so, you might find that something that typically is salty is going to start tasting sweet, or something that used to be super flavoursome for you all of a sudden just does not taste like anything at all. And so there's a few things that we can do to try and help. They're not always effective, but it's worth kind of going through a trial and error period and seeing what does work and what doesn't. So, when we're talking about everything tastes like cardboard, it's beneficial not only to try and enhance your taste by adding extra sauces and spices and gravies and condiments, but that's also a really helpful way to add in those extra calories to keep your energy levels up, to help support your muscle function and get you moving around and recovering from those types of chemotherapies and radiations that really knock you out. So that can help. There are actually another product that are out on the market. Sometimes they work for others, sometimes they don't. They sound a little bit woo-woo. They're called magic berries. You can buy them online, and basically what they are is it's fruit, and it comes into like a little chew-sized, I guess, little thing that you can pop in your mouth. You have a little bit of a chew of it, you swallow it, you wait a few minutes, and it's meant to really change the taste and the flavor profiles of food. So, you can have that little fruit bit there, and then you can have, a slice of lemon in your mouth, and people say that it tastes sweet. So you definitely can have a bit of a Google of those. We do give them to some patients when they're really, really struggling. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I do encourage you to give it a go if you're really struggling. Taste sensitivities. So this is when we're talking about everything just tastes too salty or everything just tastes too sweet. If that is the case, dial it down a little bit and go for foods that typically don't have an overwhelming flavour to them. If we're talking about lemonade, for example, if you know that that's typically a really sweet food or drink, if you're really struggling with the sensitivity to sweet and you have a taste of it, it's just going to put you off. So maybe go for something like a mineral water so that you're still getting the benefits of the carbonation and the hydration, but you're not really being overpowered with that taste. Again, oral hygiene is going to be a great one just to keep the saliva in your mouth nice and fresh, get rid of that bacteria that's hanging around, and that can sometimes really help too. Sometimes as well, patients can get oral thrush in their mouth. And so in that instance, definitely chat to your team and they can help you with that. But keep in mind that sometimes oral thrush can really change the profile of taste as well. Metallic taste. Using disposable cutlery can be really handy, not necessarily to remove the taste of the cutlery, but a lot of the times if all you can taste is kind of metal and then you're eating off a metal utensil, it really does just tend to enhance it. And that's more of a psychological thing that you kind of see it and you can taste it. So going for something that's a little bit more disposable, like a plastic or a wooden spoon, that can be really helpful in trying to moderate that symptom that you're experiencing. And again, good oral hygiene as well. So once you have finished your cancer treatments and you've been given that tick of approval to move on and get back into your normalities of life, it is really important to kind of jump back down and follow those generalized, healthy eating principles that are out and about everywhere with the government as well. It's all about choosing a wide variety of fruits and veggies and grains, eating a little bit of everything from all of the different food groups so that you're really benefiting from the macro and the micronutrients. Make sure that you're keeping your bowels nice and healthy, drinking lots of water, limiting your intake of alcohol and saturated fats just for general well-being as well. The Cancer Council is where this image has come from, and we can talk about that again in the next couple of slides of where to find this information. But typically speaking, this diet isn't as high in total energy and total protein as what we would encourage during cancer treatment. So we do still encourage you to have fruits and veggies when you are going through your cancer treatment, but there is a lot more of a priority over your protein and your energy. And in those days where you just can't get anything through, if you want to head over to Macca's and get a cheeseburger or a Big Mac, we're never going to say no. It's better that you have something than nothing at all. And then once you finish your treatment, jumping back to your general healthy eating principles are going to be really helpful in just maintaining your weight, maintaining your healthy eating, and all of your nutrient intakes as well. So some common myths and anti-cancer diets. And look, I'm not going to be touching on all of them because I think I'd be here for about a week, but we are going to talk on some of the most common ones. First one being sugar feeds cancer, and this is a huge one. And, fair enough, because in the media, there's so much information to say, sugar's bad for you, sugar's good for you, added sugar's different, don't have fruit because there's sugar in it. And it can be really confusing. And I guess when it comes to your nutrition and cancer, this is one of the only areas in the entire lot of your treatment that the ball is kind of in your court. We can give you as much information as possible, but at the end of the day, you're the ones that get to choose, what you're putting into your mouth. And it's an area where you can kind of feel like you've got a little bit more of a hold, and I guess a little bit more of agency over, what you're putting into your body and how you're managing getting through all of this. So, it's a very common concern that comes up many, many times throughout treatment. And you're not wrong for questioning it, really. It's very normal to be doing that. So the theory for this one is that, cancer takes up and uses glucose faster than other cells in the body. So if we deprive the body of sugar, we will starve the cancer cells, and they will shrink and they won't come back. In reality, if that would be, true, that would be great. But in reality, all of our cells in the body is going to be using glucose, which is sugar, before any other form of energy. It's the body's main source of energy. And sugar comes from things like carbohydrates, can be added sugar, can be from fruits. Almost all foods in the diet will have some form of sugar in them. If we're starving our body of sugar, we're then having to go to the next best thing, which is going to be your protein. And if you're not introducing enough protein in your body is going to start eating into your muscle stores that you already have. And that's where we see muscle wastage, and that's where we start to see a breakdown and a loss of weight, and then your treatment can get quite difficult. So it is really important to make sure that you're introducing enough protein and energy into your body. And our body's always going to be producing glucose on its own. It's part of its natural function. So even if we don't eat sugar and if we try and reduce the amount, there's always going to be sugar there in the body. And if it doesn't go for that, then it's just going to go straight to protein and fats. So in total, the most important thing is that we're getting enough nutrition. So if we're eliminating the sources of sugars and carbohydrates in our body that are going to give us that boost of energy, we're really going to be struggling to get enough nutrition to support what our body is asking of us, especially when we're on cancer treatments as well. Cancer thrives in an acidic environment. So this theory here is that, we're wanting to try and follow an alkaline diet, which typically has been, I guess, a bit more in, the media these days. The theory is that, cancer thrives in an acidic environment. So by following an alkaline diet, you can reduce the cancer growth. So we've included a photo of the pH scale down here for those of you who aren't familiar with it. We've got 0 on one end, which is acid, like that is as acidic as you can get. And then we've got 14 on the end, which is a really basic non-acidic component. So something like a drain cleaner. We want something in the middle, which is like water, right? So that's where we sit typically. Our body cannot change the acid level in our blood. You can't do it by food. If you eat foods that are typically low in acid, you're not going to be able to control it. And I guess the thing is that, there are some research studies out there that aren't supporting this in humans, but if you're having an alkaline diet, your pH in your urine is changing. And the only reason why that is because your liver and your kidneys are actually processing this, and they're excreting out the excess amounts of alkalinity, basically. So yes, you'll see a slight change in your urine, but it's only because your body is doing its own job of maintaining your pH levels. And that's why you're finding the excretion. So, whilst it's great that this type of diet really encourages the inclusion of fruits and vegetables, that isn't going to be enough to change the pH of your blood. And it's not something that we can actually physically do by introducing food or reducing and restricting types of foods as well. So I've mentioned here, there are no studies to actually support an alkaline diet in an adult. And if you do a bit of a Google, you may find that there are some, but just keep in mind that these studies are often done on animals, and they're often not supported with big cohort studies, especially people that, are experiencing cancer and going through cancer treatments. Intermittent fasting. And look, I will just say here, there is some, you know, emerging evidence and a bit of a watch this space here, in that, you know, sometimes when you're fasting before having your chemotherapy, you know, there is a little bit of a good uptake, but in the most times, no. And when I say it's emerging, I mean it's very, very, very much in its early stages. So the theory here is that, you know, fasting can prevent cancer growth and can really help with cancer recovery. But what we know, and what we've kind of touched on previously in the last few slides, is that we want to be trying to eat as much as we can and introducing enough energy and protein in our diets so that we can maintain our body function, we can keep our energy levels up. When we are restricting the amount of food that we're having, and when we're fasting, we're really limiting the opportunities that we have to introduce nutrition into our diet. So not only this, but you'll also find you feel really quite tired. And, you know, especially for patients that also have diabetes on the side, if you are dousing yourself with heaps of, you know, carbohydrates or protein or, you know, whatever it might be in one go, it's going to be really difficult to manage your sugar levels. It's going to be really difficult to manage your energy levels as well. You'll find that you have a bit of a spike and then you kind of drop down. Whereas if you're having a little bit of protein and energy and you're having your nutrition, little bits around the day, your energy levels are going to be a lot more maintained, which is what we want. So as well as that, yeah, you're really missing out on an opportunity to get enough protein and energy in. And so that makes it really difficult to maintain your weight because you're having to pack everything into a really small time frame. And sometimes it's just not possible to get enough nutrition in that section. In saying that as well, the body can typically only digest, you know, 30 grams of protein at a time. So if you're smashing 120 grams of protein in one go, your body's not going to be able to manage it well. And whatever it can't digest, it's going to excrete out in your urine or your feces anyway. So for cancer prevention and for maintenance through treatment, it is really recommended to follow a well-balanced diet, high in protein, high in energy, inclusion of all 5 food groups to really make sure that you're giving yourself your best shot to get through it. So if you're wanting to try a certain supplement or a particular diet, you know, you're absolutely more than welcome to. And I know I mentioned it before, you know, it's an area of your life and, you know, part of your cancer treatment you're able to have agency over. So of course, you know, you're well within your right to do your own research and to check and see, you know, what you might think will be right for you. When it comes to supplements, so, you know, it might be, you know, some vitamin tablets, or it could be, you know, a protein powder that you've seen that's been advertised, definitely always run it through your treating team, your dietitian, your pharmacist, your doctors. Sometimes we can find that, you know, when you're going through your cancer treatment, you have to actually limit some of the supplements. So, you know, it might be vitamin C or some antioxidants, as it can actually impact on the effect of your cancer treatments. So definitely always talk to your team about it first. You know, sometimes it can be helpful if you're wanting to have some supplements like vitamins, but also keep in mind that they're only ever going to be useful if you're in a deficit of those vitamins. Otherwise, again, they're going to be excreted out into your urine as well. So where to find credible information? So, you know, you've come in today and that's definitely one of the first steps. You know, Lymphoma Australia has heaps of information and lots of good resources to direct you in the right area. In terms of a dietitian and a nutritionist, every dietitian is also a nutritionist, but not every nutritionist is a dietitian. In Australia, it's actually not regulated to be a nutritionist. There's no overarching body that's going to be able to give you a qualification. So if you are looking at a nutritionist, make sure that they've got a degree from a university and that they haven't just had, you know, a diploma or, you know, a 6 to 8 week course, because, you know, some people unfortunately can just jump on board and do a 6-week course and be able to call themselves a nutritionist in Australia. The dietitian is always going to be more knowledgeable in personal nutritional advice. Nutritionists tend to be a little bit more, I guess, broad. Always look for the APD after the dietitian's name. That means that they are part of Dietitians Australia, which is our guiding body, and means that they've gone through, you know, X amounts of placements and supervisions, and they've been crossed off and ticked off and all of that. So definitely make sure that if you are working with a dietitian that they are an APD. Everyone's different. What works for one person isn't going to work for another. So definitely make sure that you're doing what's right for you and what you're comfortable with. Social media, again, look for the credentials and make sure that they are being, you know, looked at.
Attention, please.
Sorry, one second.
There will be
I think Erin might just be having a fire alarm drill.
I'm back. It might just go off in a second. Okay. So yeah, look, always make sure that you're checking the right information online, and ask your doctor for a referral to a dietitian if you need to as well. And here are some resources as well. So we can give you guys links for this, to obviously Peter Mac, Cancer Council, Lymphoma Australia. They're always going to be really great resources for you to start with as well. So that's it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. It definitely touched on a lot of topics that patients ask us. And I think as a nurse, I'd really love to just reiterate some of the things that you mentioned. And that is, we often send home patients with anti-nausea medication. So if you're in hospital, it's great. We give them to you. We can actually tell when you're nauseous, even sometimes when you don't tell us, and we'll try and pick it up, but you still need to let your nurses know. Yeah. But in talking medications, the medications won't work unless you take them. That's the number one thing that I always try to get my patients. I know that it's a really hard time when you're just starting treatment, and you may never have had medications like this before, and you might think that you might be okay. But if you're not eating because you feel nauseous, you need to take medications. And that's always my rule. If you've missed a meal because you can't eat because you just feel sick, that's when you need something to help you get a meal. Because if you're skipping meals time after time, that's when you're just going to start dropping weight, and that's not something that we want to see. So that's my number one rule when it comes to patients. The other thing you said was keep it simple, which I loved, because patients think they need to buy these high protein powders and it costs lots of money to buy them. No, not at all. You can get the simple Sustagen just from the pharmacy, and you can mix it in a cup of milk. And, you know, it may not be the most amazing one, but Sustagen is just enough to get you the nutrients that you need. So that's what I always think. Question. I might just quickly, I know this is really terrible and I'm sorry, I'm really going off script, but I just wanted to ask you something. You mentioned these magic berries. Can you please tell me, is it this one or is it this one? Because patients will ask.
Yeah, it's a bit of both, actually, to be honest.
So either or?
Yeah, the M-berry. The M-berry is the one that we put down, we've got in the pharmacy down here at Peter Mac. But yeah, miracle fruit basically is what they're called. So you can give those a go.
Perfect.
I would also just say they can be quite expensive. So, you know, if you chat to your treating team and see if they've got some samples of them first, so you can actually give one or two a go and see if it does work for you. Otherwise, yeah, you can get them from the chemist.
Perfect. I've had a couple questions just to touch on really quickly because I know we're over time, so I'm really sorry to the next speaker.
No, that's okay.
Someone's asked, can you say something about growing research on microbiome health?
Absolutely.
I think.
Yeah, microbiome. So there is a lot of evidence that's coming out. I'm not completely around it. I guess the biggest thing is that we're not 100% sure on what amount of each bacteria we're meant to be having in our gut. So what would be a certain amount for one person isn't going to be the same for somebody else. So it is really important to, again, talk to your gastroenterology or endocrinology team and see what's working. Typically, if you're having a lot of bowel issues, I'd probably say that may be an indication of some, you know, balance disturbances of the microbiome, but eating a varied diet that's got lots of fruits and vegetables and different food groups are going to be your best bet at making sure that you've got a good balance of all of them.
And we recommend you do not take live bacteria just while you're undergoing treatment. That's the other one.
Yeah.
Someone has asked, they're unable to take Nurofen due to being on blood thinners. Are there any foods that are anti-inflammatory?
So I definitely chat to your team about that one as well. In terms of anti-inflammatory foods, you know, there's quite a lot on social media at the moment about an anti-inflammatory diet. Typically, no, I guess is a small answer. Again, making sure that you're having a good varied diet with lots of fruits and vegetables are going to be helpful in you know, maintaining any, I guess, disease state in your body as well, and maintaining general well-being. But typically, no, there's no diet, like particular food or diet that you can follow to help with that, unfortunately.
That's fine. That's great. And I think that will probably be all that we have question time.
Fine.
But I think it's really important. You've had all the links there that people can get onto your website and go through. They can access it through their hospital. Hopefully most hospitals, including private hospitals, should have a dietitian. If not, there are plenty online who are actually cancer care specific, just like Erin, and they do online consults. We've been able to connect quite a few patients with dietitians that are not even in their state, but are still great ones, and they've had a lot of success from them. So please reach out if you need a recommendation for dietitian and you can't have one in the hospital. So thank you for your time today, Erin. I really appreciate it.
No, that's fine. Thank you so much for having me, and all the best to everybody with their treatment. Good luck with everything, and thanks for your time.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you for being here.